Time is 20 minutes past 8 UK, and that means, as always, one thing, that there are a multitude of F1 centric threads at which we need, no must pull. Oscar Piastri, Lando, Norris, DQ, we'll talk about it, all of the nuances and the upshots, what people are saying. David Coulthard has come out and destroyed Lando Norris at the altar of Maximilian Verstappen's perceived excellence or otherwise. We'll talk about Sir Lewis Hamilton self-deprecating as ever so too. We'll talk about the one that they call Andy Cowell split turbo hybrid settings, Mercedes boys and girls from Brackley and Brookes of 2014 now set to be deposed if rumour and word on the F1 curb is something in which you want, no, can be invested. It's going to get techie than techie things over the next half an hour or less. What a bloody day, chat. What a day to be an F1 fan. In summary, Lando Norris crosses the finishing line in second, 18 points. Some are saying that he had the car, the MCL39, to win that race. So dominant were they around Las Vegas, particularly Sector 2, medium speed, medium duration turns, the natural habitat of the McLaren MCL39. And therefore, Lando, surely you should dominate, right? This championship should be over, because lest we forget, if you switched Max and Lando, then you can reasonably assume at this juncture that Max Verstappen would be 1,000 gazillion points down the road. The championship would be null and void, done, in the bag for soon to be 5-time champion. Now, under that aegis, we've got to have the conversation. Who was to blame for that DQ? Some are saying on this side of the fence that McLaren have got to take the blame, right? Who else is responsible for the ride height and the setups? Of course, FP2 was staccato, stop and start, rain-strewn conditions, so they didn't get the opportunity to do the automotive due diligence over the aerodynamic and mechanical variety requisite to getting pitch perfect their setup. Some are saying that Lando Norris was being told, mate, do more. You recall Will Joseph said that. We'll go through it. Here's what happened, chat. And this is important because, again, we're apportioning out blame, are we not? Lando Norris's plank was only illegal on the right-hand side to the tune of 0.12 millimetres. That's like this much. That's at the front, 0.07 millimetres at the rear. As far as Oscar Piastri, 0.26 millimetres at the front and 0.1 millimetre at the rear. That's not a lot, ladies and gentlemen of the F1 jury. Some will say that rules are rules are rules. And if it's a millimetre or a metre, then surely you've got to throw out. So why did the FIA take so bloody long? Well, of course, there was a get back. McLaren said one of these, listen, yeah, fair play, that's happened, excessive plank wear settings, but at the altar not of malfeasance or maliciousness. This wasn't deliberate. This was incidental. This was unwillful ignorance, that they did this by accident. This was mitigating circumstances, said Andrea Stella. This is important, no, chat, because you would have heard Lando and Oscar Piastri being ordered by their mates, Will Joseph and Tom Stollard, respectively, to chill out, lift and coast. Here's some of the language, because again, I wanted to go back and take a look at this in real time during the stream. Some of the language seemed a little bit weird. I wasn't sure whether to interpret it as Lando being encouraged to go and get George Russell and shortly thereafter Max, or whether it was code for something else. Lest we forget, there are sensors in the car. They won't know the exact extent to which the plank is wearing, but they'll have a vague idea. Broad, directionally correct. Here's what Joseph told Lando and Norris. I'm going to read out a couple of different messages. It's important here as we try and apportion blame and culpability, because this feels like a seminal moment in the championship for which Lando Norris will have to take some blame. Will Joseph said, I suggest silver D4, silver D4. The fronts look more robust on this tyre, and remember, overtake. To which Lando says, yep, let's just do whatever we've got to do, please. So tell me what I've got to do. Will Joseph came back and said, okay, in which case, just do more. I don't know what he meant by that. Was he talking about the need to lift and coast? Was he talking about go and get the body in front? Was he talking about be quicker? Was it all of the aforementioned? Ultimately, we'll never know. But Oscar Piastri too was being advised by his charge Tom Stollard, race engineer, that you need to do more lift and coast, mate, around the bumpy areas, turn 5, turn 14, when you're taking curbs. It was as if they knew in real time the extent of the risk that they were going to fall foul of excessive plank wear and ultimately a disqualification. Since then, Lando Norris has reacted on a couple different things. He said, quote, "A frustrating day today. We had to do some managing towards the end of the race, and now we know it was due to some issues on our car, which have unfortunately resulted in us being disqualified. It's frustrating to lose so many points, 18 of them in the dying embers of a championship. You bet your bottom dollar it is. You're a legend, Berg. I appreciate you. As a team, we're always pushing to find as much performance as we can, and we clearly didn't get the balance right today. Nothing I can do will change that now. Instead, full focus switches to Qatar, where we'll aim to go out and deliver the best possible performance in every session." Techie that. Lando Norris doing the right thing, right? Keen to draw a line under the Las Vegas fiasco and the multitudinous ineptitudes and incompetencies of McLaren as a race team. Yeah, and still I think all parties have a portion of culpability to accept in this. Lando and Oscar for not taking heed of the counsel to lift and coast more, too obsessed in real time about maximising for their opportunity on the racetrack. So too McLaren, Andrea Stella et al. For not optimising their setup. And they're not the first team to do this. I don't want to go down too hard on McLaren. They're not the first team. Lest we forget 2022, the Bulls that were red around Spa-Francorchamps, a sprint race weekend that weekend, lest we forget. They didn't have the time to set up an otherwise very mercurial Red Bull car. Then both Checo Perez and Maximilian Verstappen were being advised through the very compressy Eau Rouge portion of Spa-Francorchamps, lift and coast. We're like, why are they lifting and coasting? They're 1,000 million seconds down the track. The race is wrapped for both of them. But of course, it was at the altar of mitigating for excessive plank wear. What we do not need is a DNF, Giampiero Lambiase was saying. But they were trying to hide it, trying to be coded. And it feels like McLaren were doing one of those as well. So they could plead ignorance and say, no hablo inglés. This is mitigating circumstances. This is what Andrea Stella had to say. And this is important, chat, lest we forget only 2 races to go. Here's what Stella had to say. During the race, both cars experienced unexpected high levels of porpoising not seen in the practice sessions, which led to excessive contact with the ground. We apologise to Lando and Oscar for the loss of points today at a critical juncture in their championship campaigns after 2 strong performances from them all weekend. Who's Andrea Stella talking to? What's going on here, chat? What are we doing, Andrea Stella? We apologise. Can you spell United Colours of Benetton? Like, could you be any more philanthropic and altruistic in your sporting endeavour? It's almost like this doesn't belong in Formula One. Are they too nice to win themselves a championship of the drivers' variety? I was reminded of Zach Brown's latest appearance with Andrea Stella on the Beyond the Grid podcast, during which he said words to this effect: that if it meant us losing the championship as versus picking one driver, then I would be happy to do that. His words, and I quote, "I want us to make sure if we don't win that Max beats us, that we don't beat ourselves. We're well aware of 2007. 2007 is referring to when Alonso and Lewis took bites out of each other's points hauls in the driver's standing, sufficient to let Kimi Raikkonen creep in the back door and secure his one and only championship of the driver's variety." Zach Brown continues, quote, "We're well aware of 2007. In the event 07 happens again, I'd rather that outcome than all of the other outcomes yielded by playing favourites." Listen, Zach Brown, you might have to change that, mate. Sometimes it's not the strongest of the species that survives, but the most adaptable to change. Are you prepared really? Are your sponsors prepared? Google, Chrome, et al., Air Wallets, all of those bots, Monster Energy Drink. Are you prepared really to sacrifice commercial upside at the altar of philanthropic behaviour and altruism? I don't think you are, Zach Brown. And if you are, then you shouldn't be, sir. F1 championships don't come around every year. Who knows what's going to happen next year in 26 when the rules and regs change. Biggest rule and reg change, by the way, in F1 memory, because it's both aero and power unit. 50% ICE, 50% electric. Who knows what's going to happen next year, Zach Brown? Who knew that in 05 and 06 the Fernando Alonso wouldn't ever in his F1 career have himself another bite at a Drivers' Championship cherry. I didn't. I thought he was going to win about 10 championships back to back to back. So the Overton window, therefore, of opportunity in F1 is nothing if not fleeting. Zach Brown, you got to fix up, mate. You got 2 championships. The gap in the championship rests at 24 points between Lando, Norris, aka Dustin from Stranger Things, and then they won that they call Maximilian Verstappen. It was updated. This was the first official news that we got earlier when we were waiting for the official confirmation by Chris Medland and the FIA. Let me tell you this as well, chat, as we keep this up front and centre on the right hand side of your screen. This is important. But for Lando Norris's DNF reliability settings at Zandvoort, you know that Lando Norris would have won the championship a la Felipe Massa in 2008, only to then go and lose it in the stewards room. There's a conversation to be had here, chat. I'm telling you, this is really important now. It's as important as this. The FIA, as far as they're intervening, what we don't want is a regulatory body that intervenes in the course of the championship. Liam Parker, Chief Communications Officer of Liberty Media, said that this is content. No longer is F1 a sport, and that's a dangerous line to tread, isn't it, in 2025? I don't think we want it to be WWE. Kayfabe is good. I understand there is upside as far as attracting and keeping brand new eyes to the sport and attention dollars. The fabled 18 to 35 demographic, I get it. I understand it. But surely there is a risk that old grizzled F1 vets, fans of the sport for the longest time, like your boy Cameron CC, will be disenfranchised somehow from perceived meddling. Now, this isn't me saying that they shouldn't have been disqualified, but can you trust the FIA when they go away and take 3 hours to turn a result around like this? Why did you take so long, FIA? Lest we forget, Bernie Ecclestone, head of the commercial arm of F1, once upon a time would always say that the result has to be the result. You don't want to go away 3-4 hours and then check CFAX or the internet or Google's or BBC Sport or your boy Cameron CC, only to realise that you've been lied to. The last time I checked, Lando Norris had finished in second, so why is he no longer on the list? The result needs to be the result, lest we wish to have broader, more insidious problems in the weird and wacky world that is F1. But for Lando Norris's DNF, this would have been Abu Dhabi all over again. He would have won and lost the championship on the same day in the stewards room. Techie. Bernie Ecclestone's right. You need to be able to trust the result. There is no other sport in the world that you come back 3-4 hours later and the results changed, even ever so slightly. It's not good enough. F1, particularly as we get into the championship rounds, I think they need to sort out their act. Oh, and by the way, got to talk about some Sir Lewis, because Lewis Hamilton has said that this is his worst season to date. Oh, and by the way, is rain still wet in other news, Sir Lewis? No kidding, Sherlock. Everybody, there are 1,000 gazillion F1 fans who still think that Sir Lewis is one of, if not the greatest pedder that they've ever seen. This season then better be your worst season that you've ever had in Formula One. Past and present, sir, and future, because lest we forget, John Elkann is desperate to put a driver in there, mention no names, Ollie Behrman, for infinitely, exponentially less a price financially, and potentially for more upside in terms of performance. Now, Lewis wasn't bad in the race, but it's not just about the race, is it? Of course, you got to nail it in qualifying, in what some are saying in 2.5 is a qualifying bloody championship. Now, Scuderia Ferrari, of course, have to take their share of the culpability. They are to blame. They can't absolve themselves. They haven't built a car. Lewis has asked them for a gazillion things, none of which they've delivered as far as the handling dynamic of the car. They look like an SH1 T-show, don't they? They're this Shakespearean level of false seeming where they want to pretend as if everything is okay because they can do 2.0 second pit stops, but they haven't designed a car and they don't have the people requisite and necessary to design themselves a car. Mention no names, the last airbender, the one that they call Adrian Newey. Do they? Frederick Vasseur out the wheel though, so nothing to worry about here, notwithstanding the fact that John Elkann never wanted Frederick Vasseur. It was only because Christian Horner at the time of the extension was not available. I don't know what Lewis Hamilton's going to do here, chat. but I don't see it working out well. Maybe he rolls the dice and it's no longer ground effect and he can leverage his very aggressive braking style, super geometric racing line or V-line, depending on who you're speaking to. Maybe Lewis Hamilton can get it back. Maybe, just maybe, but I'm not holding out hope. Ripe old age of 41 next year, he will be. And F1 is nothing if not in 2025 a young man's game. Father Time is undefeated, undisputed. Pound for pound has never lost a round. How do you know? Well, Jack Brabham in 66, Nino Farina in 1950, and Juan Manuel Fangio in 57 were the last bods 500,000 years ago, as near as makes no difference, to win themselves a driver's championship at the ripe old age of 40 or older. Coco, you're a legend. I appreciate you. Since Balestre, we have not seen such meddling. It's not that McLaren shouldn't have been DQ'd, but how many times should a team have been DQ'd without having been? Well, go on then, Coco. This is the problem, mate. Because the FIA said they don't have the necessary resource to check every car all of the time. So how many other times? I mean, Alonso's been speaking about this right over the past couple of weeks, saying that where has all this performance come from all these teams who apparently aren't bringing upgrades? You can ask yourself about McLaren. McLaren haven't brought an upgrade for years, wherever Red Bull have been developing all the while. So where has this pace come from? Does it pass the smell test? Is this Hanlon's razor a case of? Do you know what I mean? Never chalk up that which you can chalk up attribute to stupidity, that to malice. If it looks like daftness, then more time it is daftness, right? Who much you're a legend. When facts don't fit in the agenda, just scream fit. I don't think it's too easy. I think this is a nothing burger, Umanch, some sort of apophenia. But again, you will be forgiven for looking at the FIA and calling dodginess. Lest we forget DAS, Mercedes, lest we forget the X-Wing, lest we forget the double diffuser, lest we forget fuel flow gate that all of a sudden disappeared. Nothing to see here apart from a line in the P&L of the FIA, a settlement from Scuderia Ferrari to the tune of tens of millions of dollars, allegedly. It's techier than techie things, this. But again, you can't forgive F1 fans for looking at the FIA as a governing body with the side eye. A fish stinks from the head down, some say. Mohammed Ben Sulayem. I mean, do I need I say more? Oh, and by the way, Aston Martin are about to get rid of Andy Cowell. What? Care? He's only been in there. He's not even been in role 12 months. So what are we doing here? Lawrence Stroll, of course. I mean, I'll never forget a delivery launch a couple of years back. He said that when I get passionate about something, I win. I will throw all the money in the world at the problem. 250 million not long spent on the bloody factory in Middle England. 50 million, an additional incremental 50 million spent on the wind tunnel. He wants the best things. Just signed Adrian Newey, paid an arm and a leg for him. There are no lengths at which Lawrence Stroll will not stop, apart from getting rid of his son to win himself a championship of the drivers and all constructors variety. But Andy Cowell, bloody Nora, that dude's god tier. 2014, he was the guy that heralded the beginning of the Mercedes era. 2014 to 2021, 8 constructors back to back to back. Lewis Hamilton's 5 championships again, back to back to back, or 6 even. Bloody very nearly consecutively, right? What are we doing here? This makes no sense. Andy Cowell is the god tier dude who ushered in that era of Mercedes dominance. So you're going to appoint him and get rid of him within 12 months. There is a new manager bounce that Lawrence Stroll's expecting to see, and I don't think he's seeing it. But I don't think that's the way this thing works. There is durable competitive advantage, and therefore lap time instability. This is not the Premier League. You don't hire and fire. Your name is not Roman Abramovich, Lawrence Stroll. Here's what Andrew Benson writes, that the word on the F1 curb, insiders up and down the paddock are saying that Aston Martin Chief Executive Officer Andy Cowell is on the verge of losing his job after just over a year in the role. I mean, he may as well sack off Adrian Newey as well then, right? He's only been in there a year and they still haven't built themselves a goal. What are we doing here? Andrew Benson, again, for the avoidance of doubt, all F1 journalists are created equal, but some are created more equal than others. Benson of the BBC writes, multiple senior sources in F1 have told BBC Sport that Aston Martin team owner Lawrence Stroll is poised to act after disagreements between Cowell and the team's new managing technical partner Adrian Newey. Okay, so that makes more sense. Oh, the humanity. Beef already at Aston Martin, of course, and this all the while all of the other things are going on in the background, looking to privatise Aston Martin Lagonda, potentially the car manufacturer. What are we doing here? Share price doing one of these as far as Aston Martin, all at sea. No final decision has been taken just yet, but it seems Cowell is set to lose his job running Aston Martin as CEO and team principal, although he may retain a position within the wider organisation. What are we doing, chat? This just sounds like keeping up with the Kardashians F1. Falling out. What for? But again, Adrian knew he's always going to win that battle, right? Isn't he? Andy Cowell. He is the key man in that team now, upon which the hopes of Aston Martin going into 26 and beyond depend. An Aston Martin spokesman said, quote, the team will not be engaging in rumour or speculation, of course, as you would expect. Quote, the focus is on maximising performance in the remaining races and preparing for 2026. Again, new rule and reg spec, 50% ICE, 50% electric as far as the power unit. An era, a rule and reg set which will be driven by one's ability to nail that and expedite for the learning curve of their power unit. Doesn't sound like Red Bull have done a great job. Honda potentially, Scuderia, Ferrari potentially, but the favourites are of course Mercedes. No replacement, continues Benson, has been confirmed, but former Red Bull team principal Christian Horner is among the possible candidates. So let's talk to this now, because this is important, because I thought that the reason why Adrian Newey left Red Bull in the first place was solely to get away from Christian Horner. He loved that team. They were sufficiently swashbuckling pioneers, innovative. They let him do what he wanted to do. If he wanted to go away and chill out for a bit, I mean, on the back of his accident where he fractured his skull, I'll have you know. If he wanted to go and design the Valkyrie, if he wanted to work from home, they would allow him to do what he needed to do. Pierre Vacher and Enrico Balbo, meanwhile, held the red pen. He left. Why did he leave? Well, because Christian Horner was taking over, right? It became Christian Horner Red Bull Racing, no longer Oracle Red Bull Racing. Christian Horner was out here with his politics and his power broking, trying to spin off Red Bull Racing Technologies, leveraging British financiers. He was keen to be front and centre, keen to take all of the attention, keen to profiteer from Kim Kardashian, keeping up with the Kardashian F1. That was Christian Horner's charge when he's team principal at Red Bull Racing. And then there was the final nail in the coffin, right? The straw that broke the Adrian Newey camel back. What happened? Well, the PA allegations, lest we forget, the PA was also, Christian Horner's PA was also Adrian Newey. Adrian Newey said, one of these, I'm out. I'm done. I can't tolerate this. I want to build myself a car, and all that's happening to me is that F1 accredited journalists are putting a mic in front of my face at the livery launch, not asking me about the car, but asking me about Christian Horner and the PA and the allegations and the coercive behaviour and the misconduct. And how can you have a Red Bull team that takes itself seriously and this investigation if no one has been suspended? Adrian Newey doesn't want to talk about that. He doesn't want to. He's the last airbender. He sees airflow and how it traverses over the nuts and bolts of a car. That's all that Adrian Newey's interested in. He doesn't want to be involved in keeping up with the Kardashians F1. And so he left, and as well he might. And we thought that that was the last that they would see of each other. However, per Joe Saywood, he says that Adrian Newey and Christian Horner have already buried the hatchet. The Christian Horner is having conversations up and down the grid, of course with Alpine, of course with other teams, but definitely with Aston Martin now. Oh, the humanity. Stroll is said to have been approached by McLaren team principal Andreas Seidel, former McLaren team principal. So Andreas Seidel's in a running potentially to supersede this chap, Andy Cowell. But I think it's Christian Horner. I just think, just give the job to Christian, right? A reunion of sorts, therefore, at the altar of what was the bulls that are red. The only person, the only missing piece in that holy trinity would be someone called soon to be 5-time Max Emilian Verstappen. I don't know whether the probability that Max joins joins Aston Martin, excuse me, with Christian Horner goes up or down? I don't know the answer to that question, but you got to think Christian and Adrian. I don't know whether Nostradamus would like it, probably not. But Maximilian Verstappen, if indeed Aston Martin can build themselves a god-tier car in 2026 capable of winning races and championships, I don't think Max Verstappen will care about the rest. It all fades to black, lest we forget Max Verstappen, as at the time of writing, has in his contract in 2026 performance clauses that stipulate if he's outside of the top 2 now, not top 3 as was with 2025 this year. If he's outside of the top 2 as at the summer break in 2026, then Max Verstappen can null and void his contract and go to pastures anew. Mention no names, Aston Martin or even a Mercedes F1. It will get techier than techie things. You're a legend, BJ. Get your boy an Xmas Christmas present, Cam. Yeah, a Lego RV21. But not a bad vehicle, that RV21, when it's had its Weetabix. Oh, and by the way, let's get techier than techie things. A lot's been said about Maximilian Verstappen and Lando Norris. Is altercation, their automotive pugilism going into turn 1. And I think it's worthy of a bit of a dissection, a bit of a deep dive, potentially. In real time when we were streaming, I had a couple of things to say about it. I challenged Lando Norris to start nailing the starts. Go back and watch the old footage of Michael Schumacher and his defensive posture off the line from P1. He would always do one of these and steer directly, almost T-boning the car in P2. So keen was he to defend and consolidate for P1, aware that even then, circa 2000 to 2004, that there was lap time, there was advantage in clean air. Even then, Lando Norris for once then got his elbows out, done his due diligence, knew that Max Verstappen was going to come charging up the inside. And what did he do? He did exactly what he should have done, which was get super defensive. However, your boy over here was almost as short-sighted as Lando Norris was. This is chess, not checkers. Look to play 4 moves ahead then. Gary Kasparov settings in an F1 car is what we're after from you, Lando, surely. And I don't think he did that. He ticked one step, one box, but the rest of it absolutely nowhere to be seen. And this is where it gets techier than techie things, because Lando Norris has been criticised over the past, let's say, 12 months or so. Ronald Vording said about the Lando Norris tape, using which he positions himself in the grid box. If you're racing for a championship in the upper echelon of motorsport formula in F1, then why would you need tape? Do you need to go and retake your test, your driving test as well? Check out get some reverse parking, perhaps some parallel parking practice. What are we doing here? This makes no sense. But again, you leverage every advantage, right? Lando Norris isn't the only one to use tape on the grid. And then you see today and you're thinking, well, Lando has all the constituent parts. He's got all of the minerals, hasn't he? But he's still not perfect. I don't want to call him a bottle job. That's too disparaging. That's too harsh a word. Coulthard is a Max Glazer. We'll talk about it too much, I'm telling you. McLaren was driving with a non-Brazil spec floor because that floor was no longer legal. So I think there's going to be ramifications from this going forward, Jerome, from McLaren. We're dotting around here, but we're just talking and riffing. I think McLaren are going to need to be more conservative. Now, look, at Qatar, are they going to be gangbusters quick? You better your bottom dollar. Natural habitat settings for McLaren. Medium speed, medium duration turns. Who better than them around warmer climes as well, given their tyre water and their ability to mitigate for the rate at which their tyres deg? Oh, the humanity. McLaren will be favourites, both in the hands of Lando and Oscar Piastri, because this is their territory, both Qatar and Abu Dhabi. But yet and still, I think they're going to have to be a bit more conservative, because what they don't want, cannot afford, is another cheeky DSQ, double disqualification. Chaos. Absolute chaos. Go on and let me tell you this about Max Verstappen. So a lot of people have been talking about the turn 1 manoeuvre. I said in the live stream that I thought Lando Norris had done really well, but he'd only done half a job. In the first instance, Mark Hughes writes an article and he talks about what they needed to solve for going into Las Vegas, because it was a very complex automotive pugilistic Rubik's Cube for which the drivers needed to solve. The dragon of the automotive pugilistic variety for which they needed to slay looked something like this. graining on the front, exactly what Lando Norris said he hated. So too it's cooler climbs, but you got to get the temperature of the front tyres and the rears into optimal mode, right? Into the optimal operating window before turn 1. So Mark Hughes writes of the race that the challenge for all of the drivers on the grid in the formation lap was to focus on what? Burnouts, get 5 of them in with a view to make sure your tyres are in the optimal operating temperature window. All of the guys, the Chariots of Fire F1 pedalers up and down the grid were focused on that, apart from who? Lando Norris 1.0. The drivers up and down did 5-6 burnouts to make sure their temperatures were good as far as their tyres were concerned. How many did Lando do? 2 or 3. That Lando was too preoccupied with Max Verstappen's level of brinksmanship. Max did the right thing, right? If Lando's going to go and do a qualifying lap in P1, then let him sit on the grid, especially if there is temperature to be weaponized. If I can leave you sat down on the grid and allow for all of your tyre temps and oils to cool, and that's going to give me an advantage, then of course I'm going to do that if I'm Max Verstappen from P2. We're driving for a championship, ladies and gentlemen, of the F1 jury. And if there is a millisecond of lap time to be gained, then why would I leave that on the table if I were Max or Lando? But Lando apparently is focused on 2. Wasn't focused. He did like he did the other day at Baku when he was looking at the bloody steering wheel post, or in the lead up to a cheeky race restart safety car settings. Took his eye off the ball, did Lando. Here's what Mark Hughes writes. Drivers were being instructed to do as many as 5 burnouts. Norris was so preoccupied with where Max Verstappen was that he did only 3. What are we doing, Lando Norris? This is your dying wish, fella. Do you know what I mean? Your life dream. What are you doing then? What else have you got to focus? If not to bring the tyres up to their optimal temperature window. Norris's rear tyres were almost certainly significantly cooler than Max Verstappen's, as at the start of the race when the lights went out. As Norris bogged down slightly when he moved. Go on, and we'll talk about the start, because there's something else in here that I want to show you that shows that Max Verstappen is a little bit different, not just as far as his speed, but the extent to which he delivers, the frequency with which he delivers. Let me show you guys this. I don't want to do the George Russell thing, presenting PowerPoints. It's chaos, Johan. I'm telling you. When I realised shortly hereafter, it was techie. Here's what Coulthard had to say in his commentary in real time. In fact, I'll show you this in the first instance. This is what Lando Norris did. Crowded Max Verstappen out hard and aggressive. And I didn't hate that. Yeah, was it aggressive? You bet your bottom dollar it was. Would Max Verstappen and Ayrton Senna and Lewis Hamilton and Michael Schumacher, the original Regenmeister, do the same thing? Of course they would, because they are fire-breathing dragons who will stop at nothing, that there are no lengths to which they will not go with a view to get a cheeky dub. And I don't hate that. However, there's a way to do this. You can't just forget that there is turn 1. That's not the way this works. So Lando Norris in the first instance overcrowds Max Verstappen with a view to consolidate for P1 like he hasn't done all season long. Props, gold star, Lando Norris. However, lest we forget there's a turn to take. You see what Max Verstappen's doing there? He's coming back out with a view to assume the geometric racing line. He doesn't have sufficient road though. There isn't runway. There's not length enough for him to assume the geometric racing line proper. But you can see Max Verstappen desperately trying to get out there before he has to start approaching the apex. Why? Well, because you want to straight line the corners. This isn't Fermat's last theorem, nor is it calculus. This is counting. Very basic physics. You can't break or bend the space-time continuum. You've got to work with what you're working with. To carry high minimum speed for a turn, you need to straight line it as far as possible. And you can see Max Verstappen desperately trying to do this, but he's aware that he's running out of time. What's Lando doing? Lando's forgotten that there's turn 1 completely in absolution. There is no attempt from Lando Norris. There is no big zig to try and assume the geometric racing line from Lando Norris. And what do you think's going to happen? Well, of course, Lando Norris is going to run wide. You can see him there. It doesn't quite show his entry, but you can see the direction of his exit. He's running wide. He's taken far too much pace for the line that he has. And that was always going to happen. Here's what Coulthard said, because Coulthard nailed this in terms of his Channel 4 commentary, that in the first instance Lando was good, tick, 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 but in the second instance, as far as trying to reassume the geometric racing line and prioritise the next move, 4 moves ahead, Gary Kasparov says that Lando Norris didn't do it.
Well, he went brave, he went hard, he tried to play Max at his own game. The only thing is, he doesn't know the rules of that game, and it didn't work out for him. So he's paid the price, he's dropped back, and we've got a very tentative Oscar Piastri as well.
David Coulthard says he went hard, he went brave, he tried to beat Max at his own game. The only problem is for Lando, he doesn't know the rules of that game. It's not his game, but I thought that was beautiful from David Coulthard. I'm not one to watch Channel 4, but I might have to start watching, particularly if the one that they call David Coulthard is summarising the activities, the festivities of the automotive pugilistic variety in their words. Bravo. F1 giveth and MV1 provides. 5 in a row is alive, 4 soon to be 5, and Lando's worst fear has arrived. His name, he has a name, and his name is Max Verstappen. MV, you're an absolute legend. Let me show you this as well, because again, people have spoken about this a gazillion times. They come, the amount of poetry and metaphor. I'm trying the amount of poetry and metaphor. I need to read this out, don't I? But you boys, the amount of poetry and metaphor you use is so nice. Keep them going. I appreciate you, Katie. I appreciate you. We're trying out here. Sometimes, why would you use one word when you can use 1,000? Overly verbose GP is what we're doing. DC was on fire. By the sound of things, I might need to go back and watch a stream by Kemi. Sounds like he was batting 1,000. Outlaw, it's going to get techie and techie things. Here's what Brookesy said though. And again, thousands of Max Verstappens all over the world will cry foul at the altar of British bias. Brookesy asked the question and Max Verstappen called her out. This is how this conversation went. Roll the clip.
We're going back to the Red Bull of the past that was dominating. Is this car, do you not think it's got enough in these final 2 tracks? Because you've been good at a lot of different tracks now.
Yeah, it's all about the car.
I said you've been good. I didn't say it was the car's been good. I said you've been good. So when he say
it's all about the car, Max isn't having it, is he? Put some respect on that Max Verstappen fella's name. He weren't half bad going into turn 1. Again, not just the start. He nails the start with a consistency that's almost uncanny. It's not the start though. It's the start and then backing out of it, realising that the first order priority isn't just nailing Lando into turn 1. That's gone. It's not the strongest of the species that survives, but the most adaptable to change. And boy, does Max Verstappen adapt. Once Lando closes that off, Max Verstappen does the Steven Seagal thing and uses Lando, that his strength in the defence into turn 1, uses it against him, because Lando can't get out there. There's no way is he going to assume the geometric racing line, and so he can't carry the high minimum speed through turn 1 that Maximilian Verstappen can. It is basics. This is counting. It's not no more simple or complicated than that. And to that point, you've got to doff your cap to the one that they call Maximilian Verstappen. Right, 24 points, chat, is the delta in the championship with 2 races. The guy calculated this, and this is where it gets techie. I don't want to be a Debbie Downer for Max Verstappen fans around the world, but keep the 9 points that Max lost in his hot-headed state at Barcelona, Spanish Grand Prix 2025. Keep that front and centre of your mind as we're about to talk through these numbers. 42 points was the delta before Lando Norris got disqualified. Post the disqualification, 24 points is now the delta. 366 points has Maximilian Verstappen, 390 Lando Norris. What does that mean? Well, if we've got 2 races, proper Grand Prix and 1 sprint race, imagine a world, Mink, you're a legend. I appreciate you, mate. Too kind. Imagine a world where Maximilian Verstappen does everything he can do, wins both Grand Prix and nails himself a sprint. And then imagine Lando Norris finishes second in both the Grand Prix and the sprint too. By my count, Max Verstappen will abridge that 24 gap by another 15 points. Your delta then left on the table. Lando Norris would take the championship of the drivers' variety in that eventuality aforementioned. By how many points? 9. Remind me, chat. How many points did Max Verstappen give up at Barcelona in his hot-headedness? That would be a Shakespearean tragedy. Imagine, therefore, Max Verstappen loses the championship in 2025 of the drivers' variety to the tune of the 9 points that he gave up in Barcelona. Oh, the humanity. It gets techie, then techie things silent now. And Max doesn't like sprints, doesn't he? I mean, he might not like them, but he goes well in them. No one's got a more winning record than the one they call Maximilian Verstappen over the course of sprints, has he? If I recall correctly. I mean, don't quote me. My very B-spec noddy F1 mind and all that. I know nothing. Come on, Yuki. T-bone the papayas. I mean, I'd never encourage that from Tsunoda-san, but bloody not like, what else can he do? I think it's almost too late for Tsunoda-san. Any sort of heroics, it doesn't matter. I think he's gone. Matt's going Chuck Norris. Oh, the humanity. Cam late. Don't worry, John. Safik is techie. Who will dominate Qatar? So go on, Germanic. I think if odds makers have had their Weetabix, given the nature of Qatar, the medium speed, medium duration turns, and how frequent they occur around there, and how well that suits McLaren, particularly in warmer climes, I think you've got to, if you're playing probability games, I think you've got to think that Lando and Oscar will go well around there. Oscar in particular, right? Oscar's brilliant. Oscar's had a third and a second around Qatar in the 2 times that he's raced around there in an F1 car. So you've got to think Oscar Piastri. And again, maybe all the other guys start to get involved, right? A cheeky George Russell second, and Antonelli, he looks like he's enhorabuena, finding his form proper now, resurgent even. Maybe Charles Leclerc can get involved, or Sir Lewis. There's the opportunity here, but Max will need for the other bods to get involved. He can't just win all and expect Lando to come second, because he'll lose the championship ultimately by 9 points. Then the 9 points that he gave away at the Spanish Grand Prix in 2025. What about the time Antonelli took him out? Also, so Max Verstappen 9 points then, and then Antonelli the points that he lost then. But you'll always have these in championships, right? You'll always be able to go back and say, what if this happened? It's F1 barbershop talk there. We're playing hypothetical games, but I suppose it's fun, isn't it? Is Yuki the biggest disappointment of the season, or does he not have the equal equipment? JJA. I would say Yuki is probably the biggest disappointment of the season, if I'm honest, or one of them at least. Bortoletto over the past couple of races is doing his best to make a mug of me. He's been far too crash happy as Gabby over the past couple. But no, Yuki, the fact that he's only scored 8 points all year. What are we doing here? You heard Toto's statement. He said we've lost points in the constructors to the one car team. This isn't Red Bull Racing in the constructors. This is Max Verstappen Bull Racing. 8 points is how many points Yuki Tsunoda. That's not acceptable, is it? Remember Christian Horner saying we can't run a race on one leg? Well, that's exactly what they're doing. So why wouldn't you then, if you are Red Bull Racing, give Max Verstappen, and again, I'm playing devil's advocate a tad here and being ever so slightly mischievous, but if that's what you're dealing with, a Max Verstappen who's accruing as near as makes no difference 99.9% of your points, then why wouldn't you give Max Verstappen everything he asks for? You have to be acutely aware that if Max Verstappen leaves your team at the end of next year, the Red Bull Racing as an entity in its previous form ceases to exist. Max Verstappen, Red Bull without him. What are they? No Christian Horner, no Max Verstappen. Who would they even sign? Charles Leclerc you could get in. But I mean, that's still got to be, that's a material downsize as far as your driver's ability and what they bring to the team, right? If only by dint of their accolades. Max Verstappen 4 championships, soon to be 5, some say, as versus Charles Leclerc 0. He doesn't know what good looks like. He doesn't have that experience. And until he does, there's always going to be that material difference between the two drivers. Toto wants Max so bad, he will court him every chance he gets, flirting outside of the relationship. Darius, it's techie. We need Horner back. Brian, Netflix definitely need Horner back. I think it'd be good for business. I think his team might hate him, as did so many Red Bull engineers and employees. Mention no names, the PA. But I think he's, in the Drive to Survive era, I think he's good for business. The F1 share, the second that Christian Horner comes back, will be parabolic now. Just like Ferrari's was when they announced, Scuderia Ferrari announced that he'd sign. Hey Cameron, I like the way you're doing it. I appreciate you, mate. You're a legend. We're trying our best, you know what I mean? Stroll never seen him coming because he doesn't use his mirrors. I don't know. I have a theory about Charles Mercedes assisting McLaren in stopping Max to become 5 times world champion. It's a wild one, though. T-Racer, I mean, I'm all ears, mate. If it's a conspiracy theory, then I'll indulge it. However, you know the rules of the channel. In the first instance, truth, value and objectivity will sacrifice neither one of the aforementioned at the altar of any cognitive dissonance worthy of the moniker. In the second instance, we abide by Sagan's standard now, that extraordinary claims to be substantiated and believed in require extraordinary evidence. Max plus Carlos, let's senior fight each other. I don't hate it, but they'll never do that again, Aaron. They'll never do that. In 2015, when they did it in the first instance, it was tumultuous, to say the least. There's an incident that Franz Tost tells a story about at Monaco, when Nostradamus wasn't really too happy at Max Verstappen in his maiden voyage, Toro Rosso, brand new, young, immature, that they had him go out super late in qualifying, and Max yeeted it into the barrier at Monaco. They knew he was quick, but he was also, in his early stanza of his career, very error prone. Yeeted it into the barrier, and Dr. Helmut Marko was like, we cannot have this. You guys, we don't operate. Franz Tost was like, we operate in a way that's unilateral. I put the orders out to the team, and both sides of the garage will take them from me. We're optimising for the team circumstance at the time, says Franz Tost. Helmut Marko says, what do you, no. He went and had a word with the Toro Rosso engineers and says, you know what? I'm Dr. Helmut Marko. I report directly into Dietrich Mateschitz. You take your orders from me. Don't listen to Franz Tost as a team principal. What's he got to do with anything at Toro Rosso? You take your orders from me and make sure that you optimise for Max Verstappen's chances. He could be the next one, the next Ayrton Senna. If you cheese him off and his dad, what do you think he's going to do? He's going to exercise for his performance clause and leave here and go across to Mercedes. And that would be a bad move for all parties concerned. Dr. Helmut Marko said, take your orders from me. Some of them started obeying Dr. Helmut Marko at Toro Rosso. And Franz Tost said, no, we're not having that. No. If you're going to do that, then you need to leave the team. Here's your P45, lads. And what did Dr. Helmut Marko do? He found them a job at the big team, Red Bull Racing, proper chaos. That's a true story. Franz Tost told that on the Beyond the Grid podcast, I want to say. You can go and check it out. Would Lando risk going all in? Will Max will risk a DNF to get it all. Lando cannot afford this since Oscar is 24 points behind as well. Would Lando risk it believing he will win the grand finale? So you make an interesting point. It's not like 2021 where it's a zero-sum game if we're talking of crashing. You know what I mean? If both of them get taken out, then there's, in 2021, if Lewis takes out Max or Max takes out Lewis, then ultimately it's like, you know what I mean? Net. Full stop, new paragraph. But because it's three-way, that's where it gets complicated. If there's one incident and 2 drivers go out, then the other driver steals everybody's lunch money. Like today, Max has Oscar and Lando's. That's where it gets really techie, and I don't know how they solve for it. And then you're talking team orders, eh? What does Zak Brown do? Is Zak Brown really prepared to lose the championship at the altar of philanthropy? What? Care? No, this makes no sense. Surely these are just words that are coming out of Zak Brown's mouth. He's ticking boxes here. Can you imagine Google Chrome or a bloody sponsor, a title sponsor, DP World, hearing that out from Zak Brown's mouth? In effect, that I'm prepared to lose because of our rules of engagement. Supposing Oscar Piastri leaves, whoa, what's it all in aid of then? Orlando says, I've had enough of this gubbins, this papaya nonsense. Let me go over to Red Bull or something when Max Verstappen. What's it all in aid of? Got a bird in that. Look, I've never learnt a harsher lesson than from Mercedes in 2021 when they said, listen, we're going to divest out of the 2021 design philosophy. We're not bringing any more upgrades. We're going to focus on 2022 because 2021 is the law of diminishing returns. And Red Bull said, you know what, a bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush. We're going to steal your lunch money, Mercedes. At the altar of commitment, we're in it to win it now. Sack off, whatever comes next year, whatever. But we're here now to win it now, not next year. We're going all in, not bringing any knives to gunfights. We're going in. And what happened to Mercedes? Not only did they lose 2021, but they lost 2022, 23, 24, 25. They've been nowhere. So there are no guarantees in this weird and wacky world called F1. You can't portend what's coming in next season. So if you've got the opportunity to win now, then optimise for it. And Red Bull have always been really good at doing that. McLaren apparently have not. To be interesting to see what happens at Qatar. But again, warmer climes, it will suit apparently. If past his prologue, McLaren's MCL 3924 is not impossible. True. They say Max closed the gap with his god tier skills, but the reality is McLaren did it for him a little bit as well. Indeed, it's the biggest nonsense that a car is made for the driver. Yeah, I don't think so. Somebody talked about this. Dan Fallows went on a podcast and he was at Red Bull in the peak times with Adrian Newey, and he said, listen, of course you're gonna if you're in the debrief post the session, let's say quali, and Max Verstappen says, oh, I could do with a little bit more nose on the car, and Checo Perez says, no, I don't really want more nose on the car. I'm an understeer merchant. I prefer rear end. Which one of those bods are you going to listen? You can't develop the car in two directions concurrently. You can't straddle two design philosophy horses at the same time. It's just impossible. Again, basics counting. So which one of those drivers are you going to listen to more? Max with his bloody 2 championships at the time after just having fended off a fire-breathing goat dragon in Sir Lewis Hamilton? Or are you going to listen to Checo Perez, who's good like 1 of 365 days a year when there is a full moon and he's had his wheat of it? So you're going to listen to Max Verstappen every time, right? So the line of travel as far as the development and the setups are always going to take Max. Again, I think this is basics. I think it is basics. Last race, Lando up 26 points on Oscar. If Lando has an opportunity to put Max in the war, what would Prost do, Senna? No, absolutely. And you can see by the way that Lando moved off the start that he's not there yet. Not quite there yet. I think he's still a bit too nice, but he's not a million miles away. He's not as far away from doing something like that as he was earlier on in the season. I think he understands sometimes there is a tax to be paid if indeed you really, really, per Christian Horner, want to win yourself a Drivers' Championship. Going to bed last night at race end and finding out double DNF from a minute. Is chaos wiggle? Yeah, that's a really bad thing that F1 have done there. They have breached your trust as an F1 fan, and they may never get it back, and that makes me sad. People don't know that Adrian Newey is a godfather of Horner's kid. They are family. I mean, family fall out though sometimes and never talk to each other again sometimes, don't they? I think they do. People don't know that Adrian is a godfather. I just read that out. Nothing being said about the fuel tracer. I don't think it was fuel. I thought it was fuel initially, but there was nothing mentioned about fuel in the FIA official docs. So maybe not. I don't know. Cars are built to be fast, not to suit a driver. Max happens to know how to drive fast cars. They always say in F1 that great drivers will get more. If you have a great driver and you're looking to optimize lights to flag, then you need to build in some wiggle room by dint of oversteer. You know what I mean? Yeah, no, I appreciate you, mate. They're just trying to build the fastest car, which is theoretically a car with a heavy front end. There you go. Great minds do much. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, you've got to build in some wiggle room. Every time it was understeer. I mean, it was case in point for a while there in 2022, right? When they had the understeery RB, Checo Perez looked like he was every bit Max Verstappen's equal, but the car wasn't as quick. And when they dialed some more front end and a bit of wiggle room in the rear, just like Max likes it, then that's when you get Miami, right? Do you remember when Checo Perez put it on pole? And then without a safety car, Max qualified in what, P7, P8, maybe further back. And then Max destroyed Checo Perez's life and took everything that he owned and his lunch money from him. How are you going to pass Checo Perez that quickly into a Miami Grand Prix race that has no safety car? What are we doing? That's chaos. That's testament. This is where you get Max Verstappen saying, you know what, I told you at the Brazil Grand Prix the same year, I told you over the course of the summer break, don't ever ask me to let Checo Perez pass because he'll never ever beat me again after he yeeted it quite deliberately into the barriers at Monaco. Never in your life. And they never asked him again, did they? The fuel thing was a ruse by McLaren so they wouldn't be discovered with the planks. I don't think they mentioned anything about fuel over there. I think they were trying to be quite veiled and discreet in some of their chat. What did Will say to him? Will said, I've deleted it now, but Will said, do more. I think that was quite bad. Maybe do more to catch George, or maybe do more to catch Max. But do more seems, not push. Push is the word that they use most often when they're talking about catch the dude in front, right? Push harder, or you've got this extra engine mode. Do more sounded like it was referring quite pointedly to the need to ward off excessive plank wear, a la Oracle Red Bull Racing in 2022. Ferrari have gone from joke to tragedy to nothing. I think where I'm at, Aaron, with Scuderia Ferrari, if I'm honest, is it's a stage past hatred. It's apathy and indifference. It pains me. I'm allergic to discussing Scuderia Ferrari, the red car with the yellow badge and the black prancing course at the moment. Like I don't want to have to do it. He was saying that this is his worst season. No kidding, Sherlock. It's just been bad. I watched Lewis Hamilton in qualifying a gazillion times yesterday and desperately wanted to lay some blame at the altar of Riccardo Adami at his feet, and I could not, because Adami gave him all the proper commands. Now the translation, okay, so some of that will be lost in translation, but Adami said, listen, Porsche, we might be able to get another lap in. Lewis Hamilton crossed the line and saw the red flag and allowed that to distract him and convince him that he hadn't, incorrectly, that he hadn't made it. Oh, it's so annoying. I don't know. And then you get the bloody bollard, and Lewis is doing a Georgia Australia a couple of years ago, and he's looking at the steering wheel when he should be focused on the bloody apex. I don't know. Do more, and all he's doing is increasing the gap. Yeah, maybe misconstrued. Maybe again, just like Adami's was. Maybe it was a message lost in the translation. But Cameron, they knew, even the drivers knew that the McLaren car was too low. But then why didn't they? They've got to take some... Obvious. Look, the lion's share of the blame's got to go to McLaren, right, for the setup of the car. But surely if the drivers knew, then... I don't know. There is an asymmetric downside risk to pushing the car when you know that the setup's not where it needs to be, right? To which your front car will always be faster as long as the driver can handle it, like Max Verstappen should. There is a limit for every driver, though. Where the car becomes too difficult and slow, and Max's limits are just much higher. Very well said. Ferrari need their oil-burning turbo mode, about 100 fuel flow gate. But who knew? Nobody ever saw. FIA, when that was going on, were like Sandra Bullock in Bird Box. What fuel flow? What's going on here? No. 20 million line in our P&L. No, settlement. Well, I no hablo inglés. No speaks, but no. I don't see nothing. We are checking. Of course, McLaren has been tested every time they made podium. No, the McLaren car is good. MCL 100% knew it. Lando literally asked if he could use the DRS to pass George or overtake mode. He knew. They knew something was going on. They were well aware. And again, sometimes you live by the sword and you die by the sword. You guys are legends. Mr. Wins a conversation as per usual. The F1 hour, same time tomorrow, 8 p.m. as always. 10 a.m. we won't do, but normal scheduling will be resumed. Driver ratings with Shez in the PMs, 8 p.m. As always, we're going to try and get a shakedown in as well, but it's going to get techie than techie things. You guys have been legends. I appreciate you each to the moon and back. Do me a favour, smash the like if, of course, you like the stream. Between now and next time, the prosecution rests. No further questions. Your Honour.